Where are we going? Welcome to this exclusive podcast produced by Spirit Watch Ministries that will show where life in our darkening times is now turning and how you can avoid the detours of deception through the hope of biblical truth. The Lord Jesus in Matthew 24 warned us over 2 millennia ago and how urgently we need to heed him now. Our host is Pastor Rafael Martinez, a seasoned Northwest Indiana-based minister, intercessor, and counter-cult apologist who will help you discern the journey of change we're all on as the last day of the last days now winds down. For more information, check out our Facebook page and our website at spiritwatch.org. Now, here's Pastor Rafael.
Well, it's good to be back here once more from our virtual Spirit Watch Ministry studios. Thanks to the wonders of digital technology such as cell phones and good apps. I'm Rafael Martinez, and once again, I'm the director of Spirit Watch Ministries, and it's great to be back and be able to share a little bit more about a subject that has become certainly a very important one that we've been covering. I mean, every subject we cover here is always important, but we are really glad that we've had the opportunity to be able to help bring light to a dark part of our world that just has not had a lot of exposure to it lately, and and there are stories and things going on there that need to be told, and a reality that needs to be declared. And I'm speaking specifically of the aberrant megachurch movement called the Xenos Christian Fellowship / Dwell Community Church, the name it embraced a couple of years ago. And we are moving on with a little more discussion in helping us and our readers and our listeners all understand that not all that glitters is gold in the land of the Queen City. And one of our guests we have on today was one of the first people that I had the opportunity to become aware of and to be introduced to. She is a survivor of the Xenos movement, and someone who was among the very first that I met when me and Megan Cox went to Columbus back in December 2021 in the quest to get a documentary taken care of and prepared upon the aberrancy of Xenos. And she is one of those that have stepped forward and been able to help us see that the cry for help we got from an email from a person who was asking for help regarding their struggles with Xenos and how much it had devastated them, that this person was not just a cracked plate somewhere in a corner. This person had generally been through an experience that would destroy anyone. But her name is Claire, and Claire, welcome to our studios here. Thank you once again for participating.
Hi, Raphael. Thanks for having me.
And I'm so glad that I had a chance to meet you and so many others there at that moment. And we were talking recently, and you'd mentioned to me that you'd never had a chance to really meet that many former members of Xenos together, all in one room, had you, before?
No. And like I've told you and told production, like that was probably one of the most positive experiences of my life. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. What was so positive about that? What's it like to feel when you're around people who've all been through the same sort of experiences you have? I mean, what was that like for you personally?
Well, there is a lot of safety in understanding that there are people that have been through a similar type of trauma and pain as you. And like I've said before, like all of us knew what we wanted from that experience and what we didn't want, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very cathartic to share experiences that were validated and so similar to one another.
Yeah.
Because it just validates something that had either been just disputed by several people, a couple of people, whoever. And that's sort of like part of the issue is that you have these complaints or these grievances, and they are invalidated time after time by an entire group of people. But this time we got together with another group of people who validated that. And we weren't together in a negative way. We came together in like a very positive, healing way. And
Yeah.
we just enjoyed each other's company, and we didn't even have to talk about Xenos. We just were around each other, and it was just a overall very pleasant experience.
Yeah, I think I think I can speak for Megan when I say this. I think we really did enjoy ourselves. I mean, Megan being a survivor of the Remnant Fellowship cult, I mean, it was like an old home week for her. I mean, everything that that she had been through, and that was certainly something that all of you were very familiar with. Both of you had been through the ringer of religious abuse at the hands of a rather unscrupulous religious movement that claims that should have known better. And they didn't. Right. Shame on them. And so I really am glad that we had a chance to do that. And I'm hoping, really, I'm hoping that maybe we can maybe do it again sometime really soon there in Columbus. Yeah. And I think one of the things that Spirit Watch Ministries used to do was we led support group meetings monthly, and we haven't had a chance to do that lately, but we do have a lot of counseling that we do to people online as well as on the phone. And one of the other things that we also did was to have actual retreats for people, retreats that would bring people together who were survivors, and to get discussion as well as practical sharing and teaching and testimony, and on how to actually deal with the consequences and the pitfalls of having been involved. So if there's interest for that, I'd love to hear from people out there who can email or call us. Let us know, but I think maybe such a time's coming for that. I would love to see something like that happen there, simply because, like you said, the energy in that room of everyone just coming together and sharing and just really coming together to really come to grips with such a thing was really powerful. I was glad to be a small part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and we were grateful to have you guys there.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll do it again, and hopefully this documentary will be coming out soon. Still have gotten no update on it. There's a lot going on in the media world due to some media takeovers. A lot's going on that's causing some slowdowns and some things, but we're still very hopeful that this documentary will be coming out really soon, and that the media business being what it is post pandemic and with a lot of things going on with the economy, that doesn't help either. So, but we are very hopeful that something will be coming forth, and part of what went on there in that room will be a very big part of that documentary. And again, it was a pleasure to have been to see that. So when we first were introduced to you, Claire, I mean, like I said, we've never had a chance to really share systematically. A little bit I mean, we've talked, but we never had a chance to really systematically or just, more in depth really understand your story. So, I would love to be able to just, like I said, ask you a few questions and tell me, what brought you to that. So I understand, Claire, as we were talking before, we, got on the phone here, we had a little bit of our own little conversation before, we started our interview today, that you, were basically a lifelong member of Xenos, and that you basically were raised in the church. And maybe you can share what were some of your earliest memories of being in the Xenos way. What was that like when you were young? What can you remember?
Yeah, I was in Xenos on and off most of my childhood and my adult life. And earliest memories, pleasant enough. Of course, I was kind of like every other child. My parents made me go to church on Sundays as I became a teenager, and I didn't want to. But yeah, it was nothing too significant until I got into high school. So yeah, my memories growing up from childhood were, just your standard memories from church. I knew that my parents were very dedicated, and our whole family went to church, and yeah, that's kind of about it.
And they've been lifelong Xenos members. I'd say they've been there quite a while as well.
Yes, they have. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you have any siblings or?
I do. I have 3 other siblings, and they went there. My sister stopped going at some point. Very an uneventful experience. My brother didn't have a good experience, and he has very firm boundaries, and he left. Not too long after he had that bad experience. And then there was my little sister, and there's a pretty big age gap between us.
Okay.
And she was also there. Yeah.
Okay. So you guys were, just trying to do right. I mean, your parents felt that was a good place for your family to be, and I'm sure they did their best, and that's never an issue. Every single member in a movement like Xenos, no matter how much whatever disagreements we may have with them, certainly go there with the highest of motives. They go there wanting to do right by their children and give them something to believe in, and something they believe will get them close to God as they see it should be done. So. And I'm sure that was part of your experience growing up. And so many people that we've spoken with who've mentioned being raised in the church, how they all just kind of went along with, of course, what they were taught, and that being directly that they're being groomed into being a part of an organization that prides itself on multiplication and making sure everyone that they can influence just come alongside and be a part of Xenos. And I'm sure that begins from the very intentional moments of middle-aged church ministry and therefore. I mean, I'm sure you saw all that as many others did. And
it does. It happens. It happens young, and there's quite an emphasis on your teenage years, especially when you're getting older. If you're in the church or even outside of it, they start pretty young, trying to get people pretty committed to Xenos, to God, but I'm going to use a little shorthand and just say they're trying to get you pretty committed to Xenos at a young age, and that they're pretty heavy-handed starting in high school.
When you say they're heavy-handed, what do you mean?
I would say they start wielding a lot of control in your teenage years. I had that experience. Having conversations with teenagers that adults should be having with adults, or adults should be having with their own teenagers, and age inappropriate. I don't want to say activities, because there's not really any age inappropriate activities, but they encourage a way of relating that is perhaps inappropriate to teenagers without a parent's consent. And specifically, something that I experienced was that way. But you do notice a lot of teenagers having very adult conversations, and I have no problem with challenging someone's intellectual life or having philosophical conversations with teenagers, but I do feel like they can kind of hold their feet to the fire when it is not to the kids' benefit to do so, making them take responsibility for honestly kind of big people problems.
Right, exactly. Well, I was reading in his book, Members of One Other, Dennis McCallum, who I believe was one of the founding elders there, and still wields an awful lot of influence, even though he's retired. He wrote in this really thick book, Members of One Another. He spends the entire fourth chapter of the book just going on and on about what he believes about relationships. And one of the things he says, and he quotes 1 Thessalonians 5:11. He quotes it. It says there in that verse that we should encourage one another and build up one another, just as you also are doing. Then he goes on to say this. He says, to encourage others effectively, you need to know what's going on in their lives. You have to be aware of their progress in various areas in order to know what to encourage. Now, it seems to me that verse certainly is being interpreted in a way by him here that sounds pretty intrusive. In fact, it is. I won't go with punches. It is entirely intrusive. He's making it sound as if you need to know exactly all the details of someone's life. And from what we've been hearing here and so many places is that that is a kind of intrusion that Xenos apparently excels in, and that apparently was one of your experiences as well, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I have heard that verse, and not that it's a bad thing to hear a verse over and over, but in that context, I have heard that over and over and over. There could be a single line in the Bible, and you hear it, and it wields so much power, and your instinct and your gut tells you that this is inappropriate, and this feels like manipulation, and it is manipulative, and a lot of these people think they're well-meaning and they're doing a loving thing, but that is how they're indoctrinated, and that's how they're taught. They're taught that there is a certain type of intrusion that's appropriate, and it's not. And specifically me as a teenager, if I'm just going to kind of tie that into that context, that's what happened to me. They thought they were doing a loving thing to me when I was a teenager, and I got excommunicated at some point. And
when you were a teenager?
When I was a teenager, I was 16 or 17, and I was dating a man who was several years my senior, and he was abusive, and there were people that were adults that had met him, some of the same people that ended up kicking me out, and they could tell something was, not right. He was, I was smitten in love, absolutely in love with this guy. But he was this very charismatic, handsome college student. And, that of course was very fascinating to me. Sorry, my dog is barking.
He's just doing his job. Don't worry about that.
And anyone who walks in front of my house is their danger. But, I ended up losing my virginity to him, and he, slowly became abusive to me. People found out that I was having sex with him, and they excommunicated to me, and I wasn't even that heavily involved in Xenos either. But,
how old were you when you started, when this happened? I mean,
16 or 17.
So you were basically a minor. You were a teenage minor.
Yes. And
an older man who was he a Xenos member?
Yes, there was an elder and a leader who was a college student. Actually called me to the church and had me meet with them in a room. There were no meetings going on. I think it was probably before a meeting. And they took me in to talk to me about, they had heard some things about me, and they wanted to talk to me about what sexually appropriate behavior was, and they wanted to know details of what I have done, if I had crossed any boundaries. And I as a teenager, you just think, "Ugh, these people are just like, you're a loser. Like, just like leave me alone." But as an adult now, I think back on those conversations, being stuck in a room alone as a 16-year-old, being grilled about what all I'm doing in my private life, and not reaching out to my parents to make sure I'm okay, but instead saying I am morally in the wrong. I'm doing this that's wrong.
So where were your parents in all of this?
My parents they did not know what was going on until I came home and told them.
Oh.
They were horrified. My dad was a leader, and he had been a member and a very devoted Christian and a very spiritual person. And it is not like he was, this very lackadaisical parent. He cared about this more than the people that I went to home church with did. And he did not like that this had happened in my life, but he and my mom were enraged that I was, one, alone with two men discussing this topic, and also that they were even discussing it without their consent.
Right.
That's incredible. And I could have a child that age at this point in my life. And I'm thinking like, oh my God, that's so inappropriate. It didn't really hit me until I was an adult. Like, my God, that is horribly inappropriate. I shouldn't have been doing what I was doing.
Right. Who were the men that were grilling you?
I know one of them was Dennis McCallum. I'm not remembering who the second one was. He's one of the elders. Dennis McCallum was one of the elders of Xenos.
Yeah.
And
he's a guy I just quoted too, isn't he?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's Dennis's way of really getting to know what's going on to encourage and affect you. I mean, how really encouraged were you by what he did?
Well, to me as a teenager, that's not where my brain was. Like, I don't even remember being that involved in Xenos. I do remember going there because my mom wanted me to go there. But, the most significant experience up to that point that I had, I'm going to revise that a little bit. That was the most significant experience I had at church. I had just thought I was kind of like hit by a wall of bricks. Like, I'm confused why these men are having a conversation with me about this. And I don't even go here that often. And there are these people that are very invested. And as a teenager, you don't really articulate the issues that come with that specifically, that situation. But now as an adult, I can reflect and say that is entirely inappropriate. And, I guess maybe, thank God, I didn't really know any better at the time, but my mom apparently did. And I thought that was for once, I'm just a teenager, and parents do everything wrong when you're a teenager. And I thought, wow, my mom's being really cool about this. And she even, she does not like my boyfriend. She gets a very bad vibe from him. And she was even enraged that this happened. My parents were really upset that this had happened.
Was anything said to him? Yeah. I mean, what did Dennis McCallum say?
I don't know.
And nothing was said. So Dennis said nothing to the man that had. Let's just be clear at this, okay? Let's take a step back on this. You're a young teenage girl, and an adult is taking advantage of you, is sexually using you. And your parents don't know about this, but Dennis McCallum finds out about it, and he counsels you, and then you get disfellowship. But what happened to him?
I actually don't know what happened after that. This is something that I had thought about years later. It wasn't, though I don't have a lot of memory from my time being in the high school group, because I wasn't that involved, the few things I do remember involve being lectured by two older men about appropriate sexual behavior and asking me what all I have done. And then ultimately, when I finally did getting kicked out by a room of, adult women, which also really upset my parents because they weren't aware that this was happening. So, I do not know the aftermath of any of that. I kind of wish I did, actually, and I haven't really talked to my parents about it too much since it happened, especially in recent years. But yeah, I do wish I'm very curious if they brought up.
So you were excommunicated at what, 17? I think you said 17 years of age.
16 or 17. Yeah.
It just boggles my mind that, they could do such a thing to you and completely just quash any discussion or any kind of dialogue, that leads to accountability by the man who took advantage of you.
Right. And given the things that had happened to me at that point, he should have been in jail. And in fact, I think things actually later did happen in his life, probably as a result of how terribly he did treat me. But the abuse, I eventually was like, the abuse became much worse. And that was a very significant marker in my relationship with him. Once I got kicked out, I had no one else. And I think people who are abusive, narcissists, do want to isolate you. And I was at that point completely isolated from a lot of the friends that I had because I did grow up in the church. And the abuse escalated to, physical and sexual abuse after that. And I had no one, and I did end up going back there one time when I was alone and desperate. I went back to the campus and I was approached by someone and I was told to leave.
Oh my God.
This was when I was almost 18, over a year had passed, and they said,
Claire, I don't believe this. Wow.
Yeah, they said if you're not repentant, then you have to leave. And I just wanted to scream, like, you have no idea what my life has been like. But it's as being someone who's an abuse survivor, those things are hard to communicate. It's hard to communicate something that heavy to people that have also, in a way, abused my age, my youth, my trust. So yeah, it was, it's pretty jarring to think of it as an adult now. Sometimes you don't really understand the level of abuse you suffer by people, whether it is a partner or it is an organization, your church that you trust, and people within that church that you trust. You don't realize it until years have passed and you get some hindsight, about you understand what healthy relating and healthy relationships look like, and you look back and think, wow, they really did me wrong there. And eventually they took me back when I seemed repentant enough. Years and years had passed when I was in college, and I came back. But yeah.
I mean, Claire, it saddens me, that you had to deal with something like that, but unfortunately yours is not an isolated story. I've got emails from people who clearly have an interest in, and in some way, shape, or form doing this really a passive-aggressive form of defense of Xenos when they email me. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, that they often say is, well, how do you know that the stories of the people you have on there that they aren't all just lies? Because I really just don't understand. One guy wrote how you could possibly really believe that the few good apples that you're talking to, or the few bad apples that you're talking to, really truly represent the vast orchard of good that Xenos really is. And I'm afraid this poor fellow misses the entire point altogether. The fact that you even have one to begin with is one too many. But it's like I said, your story's not alone. We've been having people who have testified to having suffered the sort of things that you're talking about. I mean, it's beyond belief that no, it's not. Well, it's not really beyond belief that these groups that claim to be so spiritually advanced as Xenos likes to affect itself to be, really miss the entire boat. I mean, I'm reading there to be something else out of chapter 4 of Members of One Another. Dennis McCallum, the guy who talked to you, he says here, proper understanding of these passages rules out merely saying, I have a friend I love and I try to build up. Well, that's not good enough. This passage is referring to the body of Christ, and it's Romans 12:16 and Romans 15:7. This passage refers to the body of Christ not to someone we already love. Two people who love each other is a nice start, but we are called to form Christian community with everyone. And yet yours and so many others are an argument to just the opposite. That it sounds to me, if you're going to begin Christian community, you should begin to those who are hurting. And everyone who's really been hurting that I'm hearing about in Xenos can only expect maybe a gunshot to the head as you bleed out somewhere. I mean, that sounds violent, but that's the kind of level of mercy that you guys are given.
Absolutely. That is exactly. We receive such little mercy and understanding, and God, ironically, of all things, grace. We receive such little grace, especially for the suffering caused by, life in general, but suffering caused within the walls of an organization or the church or the small group of people, your home church, of people that you trust. And there is, I have been through a lot of things in my life, a lot of very painful things. This is by far the most, the things that had happened to me within Xenos have been by far the most damaging. And if that was a one-off thing, it would have been concerning in the first place because of how far it got with me. But the fact that I saw it happening while I was there, which, grew my hesitancy, but people I know and people I love, this happened to an innumerable amount of people that I know, and that I'm still close to, or that I just hear of, is, testament enough to that there is an issue. Yeah. They know there's an issue, and they, I think, practically cannot publicly acknowledge how bad they have missed the mark with so many things. There are so many good people that are there. I know and love people that are still there, that are doing great things, but to do those people the injustice of being associated with a place that is doing so many people so much wrong, it's terrible because they're effectively cut off from being effective Christians or just generally good people by their association with the place. Because they could, if they had a semblance of humility regarding everything that has happened in the past, however many years, several years, especially this past year and a half, 2 years, or whenever Mark created his website, I think 2018 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
They
and that's the xenosaccult.com website, right?
Correct. They could have done so much good with that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Right. And they haven't.
Right.
It sounds to me, as best as I can tell, when Megan and I started our investigation, started reading up and started really studying and started understanding where Xenos was choosing to present itself and leverage a position to stand on, a rock that it was going to make a stand on, regarding where it felt about the individual sort of things that were reported by Mark and others. And Mark's not been alone. I mean, he's been certainly the greatest lightning rod up to this point, but there have been other podcasts and other internet things such as Reddit, of course, and all kinds of other places out there where people have testified quite openly to what they felt about Xenos, and it's not been. And they've been scattered, but lately, like I said, it's just been to me. These things are all are smoke without the proverbial fire, and when you see that, we knew something else was going on, and when we started investigating, we got the email from the ex-member who wanted our help, and then we started meeting you and others. It became very clear to us. We met Mark, had a chance to visit with him. Great guy. Had a wonderful chance in sharing with him privately one afternoon. It became very obvious to us that this is not a fluke. These aren't just a bunch of bad apples, as this guy said. There's a lot going on. They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah. The responses have been, I mean, profoundly disappointing. How they have responded to people, and I'm sure that it is that to the common person in Xenos, it's frustrating to see these things, but your own experience feels very different. But I think if people are honest, they can tell that there is, in a sense, there is a cover-up. There's a bit of PR and some whitewashing going over these issues that are very clearly following this church since the inception of it, when it was, Fish House. I mean, it was controversial back in the 80s and 90s, and someone I was close with who is still in the church, I was discussing this with them a few months ago, and they said, if you're there, and especially this is different. There is a difference, and I'm not saying the adult ministries are exempt from this, but college ministries, it's a different beast than anywhere else in any student ministry, rather. Not just college, because again, they do start at a fairly young age with the intense pressures of commitment to the church. I won't even say to God, because at some point it is a front that it is not to God. There is a almost worship of the ways of Xenos.
Yeah.
But student ministries, when I was talking to this person, they said it would almost be a fluke if you were to end up in a good home church. It would be the exception and not the rule. If you are in the college group and you had a good experience, or you were just in a good group, because there are a lot of people in the college group that do have good experiences. But I think a lot of people don't really understand. They have a lot of broken down boundaries. And I am someone that is sensitive to boundaries. I do not like when people break boundaries, as I think most people should dislike people taking advantage of your trust. And
Right.
I think that is something that I don't think a lot of people do know, but I do think many, many really do know that they are taking advantage of the fact that there are so many social pressures within Xenos, specifically the college group, which is where I had my really, really terrible experience, that you will conform out of a pressure to appease people. And as someone who, I'm not even a people pleaser, in order to survive emotionally, you do end up bending a lot of your own personal boundaries.
Yeah.
And these aren't just like these first world comforts. These are emotional boundaries that anywhere else in life, if you were to let someone do this to you, would be incredibly and very explicitly violating. But except in Xenos, you are taught to submit, that the man, the person, the human in you should die to become more like Christ. Though that is a very honorable idea, to be a more Christ-like person, the world, the person who you are demonized.
Right.
And the light in which they paint general humanity, which can be a very dark place. I understand that, but there is also so much good, but they attribute every little thing to this person that is not yet broken.
Right.
That you need to be an entirely broken human before you receive, though it is not explicit, you should be a broken person before you can be received by God. It is what is implied, even though at the same time they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. Live by grace, except that you have to live by acts at the same time.
Right. And the brokenness that they're referring to, and I'm sorry, let me back up, maybe take that back. The brokenness you're referring to, which is what Xenos expects of all those that come under its authority, is a brokenness that's based upon shaming. It's a brokenness based upon mindless obedience and submission, a complete and total surrendering of one's volition and direction to the influence of another who's supposedly taking charge over you. You know, and that's one of the things that, like I said, we keep hearing over and over and over again, is that Xenos takes the place of God in your life and really becomes his voice and tells you basically how to live. You know, as I've been sharing in the past, you know, in Scripture, the Bible says in 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 5, you younger people, submit yourselves to your elders. Yes, all of you be submissive to one another and be clothed with humility. For God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you. It seems to me that there isn't much taught in Xenos that leads a young Christian man or woman or anyone to actually trust God in that very way. In the sense that you're not led to submit, reverently to one another. You're not sought to submit to one another in humility. and that you should be humble, that you should be submissive to one another. I mean, this is what the scripture teaches, but this doesn't sound like anything that you experienced. I'm just aghast at the injustice that I'm hearing here that you've shared about. I mean, how you basically were taken advantage of, and this man got away scot-free, and yet you were the one holding the bag and being told you were the sinful person. You were the one that did wrong, and even made you sit there and tell what you did. I mean, that's just
right.
That's not spiritual counsel. That's not encouraging. That's voyeurism. It's inappropriate. It's nasty, and it just amazes me. Amazes me.
It's voyeuristic. It's absolutely, and like I said, as an adult, I did not appreciate how inappropriate and vile that was, until, I was I'm in my 30s.
Yeah.
And I could have a daughter that same age at this point, and it's offensive. Yeah. And that's just one of many things.
Yeah, right. Yours is not alone. This violation of personal boundaries is just something that goes on over and over and over again. Xenos pushes it and believes it has a biblical mandate and right to do so. That's what McCallum is saying in this book, that basically he's saying he needs to know what's going on in your life to be able to quote unquote encourage you. And he's saying these passages are all moral imperatives direct from God to us and not optional for serious Christians. It's just unbelievable that a so-called elder and who believes himself to be some church growth guru. I mean, the whole book is written with this eye on lecturing to the world how the New Testament church should be run. And if he fails just at this most basic point, to me, there really isn't much worth of reading the rest of any of it. It's all spiritually and morally bankrupt. I mean, and then here you are. They leave you wandering all these years until out of the brokenness you felt, you had to wander back to their good graces and rejoined. I think you said the college group, right?
Right. And that's actually exactly what had happened. I had lost a couple of people in my life. A couple family members, and I ended up going back to the college group. I was absolutely broken, and I had just ended a serious relationship with my boyfriend. This is a different guy, good guy. Very, we're still friends to this day. But we had ended our relationship, and it was before.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but before you start discussing that, how did you get away from this guy? What was going on? How in the world, you were in an abusive relationship? Did your parents know about it? How did you get away from it? How did it end?
So eventually I was so exasperated that I did tell my parents a little bit. I gave them a little bit of a window into what was going on in my life. But, even as the years go by, I'm still kind of revealing how bad things actually were. How I actually got away from him, it was at the beginning of college, when I was a freshman in college. And I just remember relenting at some point that, okay, fine, come and see me. This is fine, whatever, because he was just breaking me down. The stalking, he stalked me. It would be, day and night, in the middle of the night, coming to my house in the middle of the night. We're just sitting there watching me, or approaching teachers, threatening me, threatening my family. It was pretty intense. It was life-threatening. I honestly didn't know if I was going to survive. I thought he would probably eventually kill me. And he did wear me down to where I would just let him, fine, you can, if you want to see me, fine, you can just come over. I just felt like it was going to end badly. And he must have also reached a level of exhaustion where he couldn't keep up the intensity of the abuse. And it came to a head when he came over for one last time, and he just stopped trying to get me. And I cannot tell you what had changed, why he left me alone. But he did continue stalking me for years after that. It was sort of quiet in the background. He was always where I was. But the explicit abuse had stopped, and after me one last time begging him to leave me alone, he left me alone. And it was at that point, I think it kind of correlated with me being able to finally tell people in my life that were close to me what was going on. I don't know if he saw some shift in me, but I was able to tell people without judgment, this is what I have been going through, and I am miserable, and I am wildly depressed. And I became closer to people in my life that I am still equally as close to today, that I was going through something. And frankly, I did not get that opportunity in Xenos. They had their boundaries, and that was, this girl had sex, you're gone.
Yeah.
But they did not get to share that experience with me of getting out of this relationship. That was other people. There were other people in my life, and they were there for me without judgment.
So all the support you got was not from people in the church, obviously.
From quote-unquote secular people. Right.
Yeah. From the world, the evil world that you were supposedly that hide away from. You ended up finding real help there, and then that's when you could grow a little bit and finally consider actually seeking a real relationship. And that's when you started out to date this other young man.
Right. Okay. And we dated for about 4 years, and we broke up. Nothing too dramatic, but the ending of a relationship is always painful, but compounded with the loss of a couple of people in your life. That was pretty devastating. Such big life changes, one after the other, within a couple months of each other. So yeah, I ended up going back to Xenos.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you feel like that was just the only haven that made sense in your life at that point, huh?
Right. I guess desperate times, desperate measures.
Yeah.
And I reached out to a couple of friends that were there. There was this existential moment that I was having with the death of the physical death of the people in my life, and also the relational death that I was experiencing with my ex-boyfriend. I was very vulnerable. I went back, and I was love bombed. It was very intense. It was like really, really unlike any other experience I have had, to be around a bunch of people who are so intensely caring, which I now can reflect in a forced way. And I actually still do really love some of these people who were a part of that, but because I really do think a lot of these people think they are doing the right thing and are kind of in over their heads when they're drawing people into this idea or into this place in their most vulnerable moments in their lives. And so I ended up going back, and probably within 4 or 5 months, I moved into a ministry house, and it went up, and then it went really down from there.
Right. because there was another incident which, we won't elaborate on, but there's another incident of an intrusion into your life that
Right.
I think for you finally really helped you see that, you're not going to be expecting loving, caring community, or you're going to be fearing nothing but people that want to get into and control you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There were people that were, I ended up marrying someone, in the church, an amazing person. I love him so much. But I ended up marrying someone. We both experienced this trauma together, and we went through something that was really unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Neither of us could help what had happened to us. And nobody knew how to handle it. So instead of the humble answer of, we just don't know, let's find support for you because we love you as a friend, it became a very black and white situation where they were dictating terms in a way. I had become vilified for my depression just, a month and a half after the incident. And I was effectively cut off from my friends because I was so severely depressed that this thing had happened. Otherwise, everything was good. I was on my way to leadership. Everything other than that was really good in my life. But I think I had struck a nerve with leadership that I was someone that could not be predictable as far as we were relying on her to not be depressed, and now she is depressed. Well, what do we do? And their move was to do some damage control. They tried to get as involved as possible, and one person after the other, people I did not know, I had never met. They had opinions about my marriage and what I was going through, and it was profoundly painful. It was
How did they find out about that? Was this something you told a discipler or your small group?
So I had told a few people about this, a couple of close friends who were leaders, but per their obligation to the structure of the church, they reported it to, advisors in the college ministry, and those people had to report it to elders, and then there were discussions behind the scenes. And listen, I am still finding out to this day some things that were discussed about me, about my marriage, about my husband. I'm still finding out things that were dictated to them about what they should do or how they should handle me. And a couple of those things were, for example, to not be friends with me because she needs to feel the tension of, she needs to feel God's tension to change her ways.
It's that word again. That seems to be a Xenosian word, tension, isn't it?
It is a dirty word. But that absolutely blows my mind that someone would try to impose that kind of environment in my life when the only thing that was wrong was the situation that I was in. Not even how I was handling it. I was handling it how every other person would have handled that. And perhaps, honestly, even better. It was such an ongoing, it was an ongoing situation where I just suffered the entire time, and I was punished. I was punished for reacting to the terrible thing that had happened to me. And I was told, in the past 5 years, I've learned more things. And a couple of them that really hurt me was, don't be friends with her because she's got a lot of stuff going on right now, and I don't think she'd be a great influence on you, which is, if you knew me as a person, is ridiculous. And another thing was, my best friend was emailed by, I think it was Joe Body, and was instructed to no longer give me any kind of marital advice or life advice. I think the subtext of that email was to ultimately kind of like drop me right now, let other people handle me. And this person, my best friend, I have grown up with her. She is still my best friend to this day. And they had tried to rip away that resource for me, that emotional resource for me. And that was that was enraging when I learned that a few years ago. I could not believe, I guess I could believe it, but it was deeper than I had realized it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And again, in listening to Dennis McCallum, just basically, extol Xenos' so-called biblical ethos, he goes on to say, I'm gonna keep quoting him because I want people to understand that here you have a leader of a movement who extols these high values, and yet his own movement doesn't practice them. He writes this. He says, "Close in modeling, counseling, and admonition are essential to such a transformation. Teaching people how to practice grace with each other must happen in community, just as surely as teaching people to swim needs to happen in water." And really, when I read that and I hear what you're telling me, I'm like, there's a divide here that can only be explained by one thing. The fact that Xenos is not this New Testament community, nowhere near close to the ideals it espouses. It truly proves itself utterly in violation of what it believes it stands for. And your experience, sadly, and that of so many others is proof of that. And now, were you aware of other people struggling with the same sort of character assassination and verbal pistol whipping? I mean, this just seemed to be a common thing and an acceptable thing in Xenos, isn't it?
Yes, and I I think I was a little noisy. Even when I was still involved, I was always openly disturbed by how people spoke about people who have left or people who brought up issues, or I was always a little disturbed. And one thing that stands out most to me is one of my roommates, she had started to bring up things with the church that concerned her, and she felt very uncomfortable. She said, "There's a lot of groupthink here. I feel very uncomfortable with how a lot of these situations are handled." One thing led to another, and she fought for a little while to stay there, tried to change some minds, to help people see her perspective, which I think ultimately was absolutely correct. She left and she went to another church. Church, I believe it. She's still there to this day and is very heavily involved in. But the narrative behind her was she walked away. I've heard people say she doesn't believe in God. She's an apostate, is what a lot of people like to label others as. She was ultimately shunned, and I remember I went on a trip with her when I was still in Xenos, before I was engaged to my now husband. And I went away for like 5 days. They were terrified of her poisoning my mind. And they were like, "We're praying for you. Oh my God, I'm so glad that you're back and you're normal." The way people are vilified, the way certain sins are, they're almost idolized in a very unhealthy way. Is the obsession there's an obsession with other people in that church. And that was a moment that I had that really rocked my faith, that when I saw how people treated her. And there were other things. That I had a friend who was sexually assaulted while she was in the church, and I believed her. I believed her.
Oh my gosh.
No one else believed her. No one else believed her. And this person later got booted for sexually assaulting underage women. And he was a leader in the church, but no one would believe her. And they vilified her for years, and she stuck it out. And I have never met such a resilient person in my life. And they should have really understood her character, as I think it was very apparent that she was such a good person, and there should have been no doubting that. Yet they vilified her, and it was, she was actively shunned from groups. She lost friends, all for being sexually assaulted by someone who was later proven to be a disgusting predator. And that is one of the most horrifying stories from Xenos, my time there. Yeah. She was my roommate.
And sadly, that's not uncommon at all.
Right.
I mean, at some point, I would hope that those stories could yet be told, and that these men can be brought to justice. Because, frankly, it's disgusting, like you said. It's beyond disgusting. It's appalling. It's absolutely it is disgusting, but it's all just horrific to hear of this church claiming to be an expositor of the gospel of Jesus Christ, that bringing the transformative power of his word to the world, just doing all it can to keep you running and people running in spiritual busy work, so long enough so you'll ignore the purely shag nasty carnal things going on right there hidden in plain sight. And that I think Dennis McCallum and Gary DeLashbut and all these men have a lot to answer for in this world and in the world to come. And that's certainly something that like I said, if this is what's coming out in our discussions, so be it. Let it come out.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to have keep those discussions coming out. So you rejoined. So at what point? When did you finally leave? I mean, what was it that what finally helped you see the light? Was it after the horrible violation that you suffered of the confidences? Was that what finally took to you to finally sever your contact with them, or what exactly happened?
So I actually joined up with an adult group, and although I know a lot of people don't feel this way, I wouldn't even argue with anyone who had a terrible experience in the adult group. I wouldn't argue with that, but I went to the adult group and joined a group where I could literally say absolutely anything. And they would listen, and they would be my friends. And I felt this weight just lift off of my shoulders. And I felt so much of a reprieve from being able to confide in these people within the same environment that I had experienced that pain. And there was so much kindness there. And I think I finally got to rest a little bit and to absorb and reflect on what I had been experiencing for, at that point, like a year or so. And I to this day, I just appreciate these people so much. And I think they are one of the people in Xenos they're genuinely really good people, and they were safe, and they were trustworthy, and they were good friends. And I eventually left that group because it was, there were so many kids there, and it wasn't a good fit as far as like, my husband and I, we weren't parents. So I went to another group and they were equally as accepting and they were great people. But it was too painful to be in that environment, to even hear people praying in the same way, like the same mannerisms, they all kind of adopt this way of speaking, very similar to one another.
Yeah. Like a chant.
Like Xenos.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I realized like I wouldn't say I was making excuses as to why I couldn't go. It was very clear. I was so uncomfortable being there. I stopped going less and less and less. And, I finally, at one point, I left, and I absolutely spiraled because it was too painful. I remember it was about 2 years of horrible depression.
Yeah.
Where, I'd lost hair. I lost like most of my hair, and I probably lost 60 pounds. And as a person, I was a shell of a human. I wasn't happy. And then I finally came to terms with the things that had happened. And, in some way, at some point in your life, you can look at suffering and feel grateful for it. I kind of settled into that place where I was pretty okay with my life and where I was at that point. All the pain included, the betrayal included, and I am where I am now, and I'm happy for it. But the end doesn't justify the means. People have to make peace with the things that have happened in their life, and I think what had happened to me was absolutely vile betrayal of trust among friends, of the most the most sensitive things in someone's life. And I've since bounced back into, I'm a person. I like who I am now today, and I reflect on what has happened to me since then, and they're not responsible for where I am now. I am, but I wouldn't change what had happened to me because I am comfortable and I like where I'm at. But God, if I could save another person from experiencing what I did when I was there, and the pain that I suffered as a result, I would do it. I'm actually fairly passionate about it.
Okay.
At this point in my life.
Well, you've got a platform right now. I know a lot of people in Xenos are listening. I know a lot of people have been tuning in from all over the area there and downloading and everything. So, what would you say to all those in Xenos right now who may have been your peers, your friends, your associates? What would you say to those who are lifelong Xenos babies, become Xenos parents? What would you say to all of them right now in light of all the smoke and mirrors that Xenos has been blowing about the dissent that they are just refusing to listen to? What would you say to them about that? And really, what would you say to them to help them understand that maybe they need to start looking for a different perspective on things there?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I could just sort of reduce it down to a sentiment, even.
Okay.
That there is what I have experienced in life. There is a value in humility, and in uncomfortable humility. that we can have. And I would argue that that is one of the better feelings in life, to be uncomfortably humbled by the things that you don't want to hear, to accept them, to embrace it, that things are not how you want them to be or how you've planned them to be, and they're ugly. There is a comfort in accepting, who you are as a person. Maybe you've done that same thing to people. Maybe you've seen that happen, or maybe you have only heard it happen to someone else. There is little motive to fabricate something like this. So I ask people that are listening to this and that are still in Xenos Dwell, that they listen without the bias of trying to protect the comfort of that place. That is a huge barrier for people, I think, is an ideal, just idolizing or making something better in their head than it actually is. There is so much benefit to accepting another perspective and letting that season what you know, and being a safe person for someone else, because I think if we are all honest, everyone can see that there is something that is incredibly wrong. There is a clear commonality between story and story and story. And, sure, there are some things where you can be like, well, that person was, this way and that person was this way. And, maybe there's a little bit to that argument that there are people that are just, they're trying to get a little piece of the action and they want to be a part of the story because Xenos is, in the news right now, and fine, whatever. For the most part, these people are in pain, and their pain is absolutely legitimate. And this is not just validating people's feelings. This is not just sensitive people needing, it's okay, we're here for you. These are actual people with actual lives, that this is their lifetime. This is the one life that they get to live. And they have been affected to the point where they need to write into a website to a man that they have not met and vented or poured themselves out to this person or to a public forum so they could be heard. Hear them and validate them. And to the elders who are either, and one in particular, mocking or making light of the people who are writing in and implying that they're gaslighting, or they are, what have they said? They're under spiritual attack. They're attacking us, and this is part of their spiritual attack. Fuck no. I'm so sorry. You can bleep that out. I'm so sorry. But absolutely not. This is reality. Like they are in denial, and the warfare is started by them, not by us.
Right.
We are victims of their making.
Right.
And there are still really good people there, and they can make a difference. Don't put up with it. Stand up for the people that you don't know. Just believe that.
Yeah. Yeah, stand up, look around, take a look, see what's going on, and realize, look, there's some wrong things going on here. And like you said, there's always going to be a certain amount of discontent anywhere. But frankly, I don't think in anything that I have read so far, I've seen that. Now, I have been approached with a lot of emails from a lot of people who clearly have access to grind with about Xenos that I've listened to, and I appreciate their sharing, but some of it is just really their own specifically personal vendettas they have against that, and while those are important, they're not relevant to the conversation at hand. The conversation at hand is Xenos Christian Fellowship acting as a cult and saying going to great lengths saying they are not a cult, doing all these great apologies for themselves, and yet everything they do and say is no different than what cults actually do. So yes, I understand fully what you're saying, and that yes, that's exactly what they need to be hearing. We're hoping people will stand up and smell the pizza, because there are things going on that the blind faith and blind ignorance are not going to excuse you by. The scripture says, First Corinthians 10:12, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. And so there's a lot going on right now, and we're going to continue telling that story in the weeks to come. And Claire, I want to thank you so much for this evening. It's been a very insightful time, and I appreciate all you shared this evening. And we look forward to when that documentary comes out, and for hopefully for perhaps another convening of people who may want to come together in community, real community. Unfortunate community in that its main bondage is that of pain, but one that I believe is redemptive. I think it would be high time for people to come together somewhere and really get a chance to kind of open up and share with one another. And I hope it does happen again real soon. Once again, thank you.
All right, thank you, Raphael, and for everything.
Thanks for listening today as we explore just where are we going. Our prayer is that you have been encouraged and strengthened, and if necessary, challenged in your daily journey through life. Jesus is coming. You can fall with the night, or you can rise with the sun. The choice is yours. You can email us with questions and comments at feedback@spiritwatch.org. And if you need urgent personal spiritual help, email us at help@spiritwatch.org. We look forward to hearing from you. Please follow our podcasting at our Facebook page and our website at spiritwatch.org. This podcast is a production of Spirit Watch Ministries, taking heed that no man deceives you.